This is what it looks like when an entire empire dies. In 331 BC, we gathered the biggest army in history for one reason: to destroy Alexander the Great. The Persian king, Darius III, pulled in soldiers from literally everywhere. Ancient writers claim he had 1 million men. 1 million! While today's experts argue about it, some guessing between 50,000 and 100,000, the craziest estimates say he had up to 250,000 soldiers. Please like and subscribe on another Historical Facts channel classic. And who was fighting this monster army? I give Alexander just 47,000 men. He was outnumbered 5-1, fighting on ground the enemy hand-picked for him, and walking into a massive death trap. But Alexander wasn't just going to survive this trap. He was going to use it to win everything. This is the story of the most insane strategy at the Battle of Gaugamela. Those two had fought before. The last time, at the Battle of Issus, Darius was completely humiliated, ditching the battle and even leaving his family behind for Alexander to capture. But this time, Darius swore he wouldn't make a single mistake. He was desperate for revenge, ready to prove he was still the final boss. He picked the perfect battlefield, a huge, flat desert near Gaugamela. It was the perfect stage for his two biggest advantages: his insane number of cavalry and his terrifying scythed chariots. He even had his team make the ground perfectly flat, clearing out rocks and bushes so his ancient superweapons could charge without any problems. Darius's army was a terrifying sight. He had thousands upon thousands of horsemen, including elite cavalry from Bactria and Scythia, and gigantic centre of infantry. And right in the middle, surrounded by his best soldiers, the immortals, was Darius himself. Darius was so scared of a surprise attack, he made his entire army stay awake all night. By the time the sun came up, his guys were exhausted. That was his first huge mistake. Meanwhile, Alexander's army got a full night of sleep, and the stage was set for the craziest comeback ever. Facing a battle line that was almost a mile longer than his own, Alexander knew if he charged straight ahead, he'd be swallowed up and lose instantly. It was suicide. His best general, Parmenion, basically said, "Let's just attack them at night, to make it a fair fight." But Alexander shot that down, saying he wouldn't steal his victory. This wasn't ego. This was a 200 IQ plan. His plan was so crazy, it looked completely wrong. First, instead of stretching his army out to match the enemy, he arranged his soldiers at a weird, slanted angle, with his right side pushed forward and his left side way back. The second and even crazier part was the oblique advance. When the battle started, he didn't march forward. He started marching his whole army sideways, to the right. This insane move was meant to do two things. First, it dragged the battle away from the death traps Darius had set up for his chariots. And second, this was the genius part, he was baiting him. Alexander was daring the Persian cavalry to charge and try to crush his flank. This was the whole trap. Invite a massive attack, stretch the enemy line out until it's about to snap, and create one tiny weak spot. The entire plan depended on a prayer that, as the Persian cavalry swung out to smash him, a gap would rip open in their line. And into that tiny gap, Alexander himself would lead his elite companion cavalry in one all-or-nothing charge aimed at a single target. Darius. It was hammer and anvil strategy, but on a level that was unbelievably risky. The Macedonian flanks would be the anvil holding the line, while Alexander's charge would be the hammer that smashed the final boss. When the battle kicked off, Alexander started marching his army forward and to the right, and Darius fell for it completely. Worried that Alexander was about to march right off the field he had spent so much time preparing, Darius ordered his left-wing cavalry, led by his cousin Bessus, to stop him. As thousands of horsemen charged out, the first part of the plan worked perfectly. Next, Darius sent in his secret weapon, his scythed chariots. He thought they would shred the centre of Alexander's army, but Alexander was ready. As the chariots got closer, his soldiers literally just opened a lane, and the chariots raced harmlessly through the gaps and then got wiped out from the sides. The super weapon was useless. Over on the right, a giant cavalry battle was going on. Alexander sent his own horsemen to fight off Bessus' attack, and the fighting was insane. But this was all just a distraction. As Bessus' cavalry was pulled further and further away, the Persian line stretched until it couldn't take it anymore. A gap opens up. It was a split-second chance, a tiny opening between the cavalry and Darius' personal guards. This was the moment. Alexander spun his entire elite companion cavalry into a giant wedge and charged. With Alexander leading the charge himself, this hammer of horsemen smashed into the weak point. They blew right through the royal guards and the mercenaries protecting Darius. It turned into a chaotic brawl right around the king's chariot. For Darius, who already saw his army get destroyed once before, the sight of Alexander himself, looking like pure rage on horseback, breaking through his personal bodyguards was too much. The King of Kings panicked. He turned his chariot and ran away. The second their king ran, the entire Persian army just gave up. Panic spread like wildfire. The centre of the army, now with no leader, completely fell apart. Soldiers, who were only loyal if the king was there, threw down their weapons and ran for their lives. It was total chaos. But the battle wasn't over. While Alexander was winning, his other general, Parmenion, was about to be destroyed on the left side of the field. The Persian cavalry on the right, led by Mazaeus, had pushed Parmenion's soldiers to the edge and was even raiding their camp. Parmenion sent a desperate message to Alexander for help. So Alexander had to make an impossible choice. Go chase the final boss and win the whole war right there, or go back and save his friends. He chose his friends. He stopped chasing Darius, turned his cavalry around, and smashed the rest of the Persian army from behind. Seeing that their king was gone, and they were now getting attacked from a new direction, the last of the Persian army crumbled. At the end of the day, the battlefield was a complete disaster for the Persians. Ancient historians claim 300,000 of them died, though today we think it was more like 40,000, maybe less. And Alexander? He lost only a few hundred. He didn't just win. He annihilated one of the biggest armies ever seen. This wasn't just a battle. This was the end of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, a superpower for over 200 years. After this, Alexander just walked into Babylon and was hailed as the new king of Asia. And the other king, Darius III? He lived as a fugitive until he was betrayed and murdered by his own guys, including Bessus, the same man who had led the first failed charge. Alexander's strategy at Gaugamela is still studied in military schools today as a masterclass. He took his biggest weakness, being outnumbered 5 to 1, and turned it into his ultimate weapon. By baiting his enemy into stretching their own line, he literally created the weak point he needed to win. This was the ultimate 1000 IQ play, proving brains beat brawn, and it cemented his legend as one of the greatest military commanders in history. He kicked off a new era that spread Greek culture across the world and changed civilization forever. If you think this was the craziest strategy ever, subscribe now and hit the bell so you don't miss our next video. And let me know in the comments what insane historical battle we should break down next. Thanks for watching.